How do you farm unique items in Last Epoch? This was the topic of a recent livestream, and it's an important one to tackle. So much of the time, you often find yourself trying to farm for a unique that enables your build, or a unique that you're already using with legendary potential, so that you can go to the Temporal Sanctum and turn it into a legendary item. And as a result, you're going to want to know how to farm efficiently, which is exactly what this video covers. Farming uniques is tied to the Monolith of Fate system. So if you don't understand how that works, or just want some more information, then be sure to watch my Monolith progression video right after you finish with this one. And if you're curious about the build I'm playing right now, don't worry, in an upcoming video I'm going to talk about it, so get subscribed, that way you won't miss the video. But for now, let's get into the topic of unique farming in Last Epoch. First off, some uniques are dropped by bosses. For example, these are some of the items dropped by the Shade of Orobyss. And both the Wings of Argentus and Throne of Ambition are dropped by God Hunter Argentus in the Shattered Lance. Many of these boss uniques are relatively common, which means they tend to be very good bases if you're farming for LP, but do keep in mind some of the rules I'll talk about later when it comes to farming for LP items in specific. For now, just know that a lot of this stuff isn't going to take you hundreds of hours, though it could take you 5 or 10 attempts. There are some boss drops, such as off of Shade of Orobyss, where you need 200 corruption before it'll drop. There are also certain uniques that are exclusive to arenas and dungeons, but most uniques can drop anywhere in the game, or at the very least in any zone where the zone's level is higher than the level requirement of the unique item itself. This means there are some interesting cases where you actually want to go back to lower level content if you're really trying to farm for something, though for the most part you'll want to do all of your farming in empowered monoliths, and specifically those at higher corruption. This is because drop rate bonuses, and of course the chance for special nodes, increases as corruption increases. But if you wanted to farm for a specific type of unique item, you'll need to go to the associated timeline. In Fall of the Outcast, the exclusive rewards are bows and quivers, so if you're playing a marksman, this is an echo you're going to be very familiar with. Now, on the other hand, moving on to the Black Sun, you can get unique or set helmets and shields, which is definitely a good thing to know if you want to be tanky. Coming over to the Stolen Lance, a place I'm very familiar with from farming for this build, you can get wands, scepters, staves, or catalyst. And for something like this, there is going to be quite a bit of variance since there's 2 different node types and 4 possible rewards. On the other hand, Blood, Frost, and Death offers body armors, so you'll know exactly what you're getting every single time. In Ending the Storm, you have a giant angry Lagan, and you get unique or set gloves. While I haven't explicitly talked about farming set items, it works very much in the same way as farming uniques. Hopping over to Reign of Dragons, and we've got swords, axes, maces, daggers, or spears. Another timeline with a lot of variance. Then Fall of the Empire, where of course you can get unique or set belts. No Mage Blood, unfortunately. Maybe a Headhunter someday, though. Then moving up to Spirits of Fire, one of the 3 you need to unlock for Empowereds, it grants unique or set boots. Going across to Age of Winter, we have rings or amulets. Another one that you might want to farm a lot, especially if you're trying to get an Oriens. And then finally, in the last ruin, we have unique or set relics. So those are all the locations you can go if you want to take advantage of the timeline-specific nodes to farm uniques. Step 1 is look for the correct timeline. Once you get there, the idea is to push the corruption up at least as high as your build can handle. Though of course, you'll want to grab any of the unique nodes that you find along the way. The higher your corruption, the more commonly they'll appear, and the more commonly random enemies will drop unique items, which, while not the best way to get what you want, is still definitely a source of uniques, which will accumulate over time. Now, there are a few rare exceptions to everything I just talked about, but they're a bit outside the scope of this video, though feel free to comment below if you want to see a more advanced unique farming guide that covers some of the exceptions. And of course, if you're trying to farm for LP, it kind of goes much the same. The more uniques drop, the higher the chances one will have LP. At least, sort of. Because LP isn't determined by just an item's rarity. It's also determined by the item's level or effective level. The higher the level to equip an item, the less likely it is that it's going to have LP on it. And also the rarer an item, the lower the chances of having LP. It's also exponentially more difficult to get a 4 LP item than a 1 LP item. So a good rule of thumb that I use personally is if the item's really rare, I don't consider looking for LP at all. If I get it, that's amazing, and I'll count myself lucky. But if I don't, it's no big deal. On average uniques such as boss drops, which I can easily farm, I aim for 1 to 2 LP. And on something really common like a low-level item, I'll hope I can get 3 or 4, but realistically still settle for 2, as 4 LP anything is quite rare. So if you want to know a little bit more about level versus legendary potential, you can come over here to Last Epoch tools. For example, Acid Fletch the Bow has a level requirement of 60 and a level 60 legendary potential. It's also pretty common, so you're going to find it a decent amount of the time. On the other hand, if we scroll down a little bit, we'll find a few that don't quite match. Aurora's Time Glass, for example, is a level 72 item that has level 100 legendary potential, so you're probably not going to be getting even a 1 LP of this anytime soon. Whereas the Aberrant Call Staff requires level 38, but has a legendary potential level of 10. This means finding a 2 LP version is going to be pretty common, and I can definitely confirm that from personal experience. Now it should be noted that set items don't have any legendary potential chance. At least for the time being, they can't be turned into legendary items. But this chart is going to be linked down in the description below, and you should find it helpful when you're deciding what to farm and how much LP you're hoping for. Generally speaking, again, I wouldn't really hope for anything above 2 LP, though in certain cases, even that can be quite unrealistic. Personally, I'd be very happy if I found, say, a Bulwark of the Last Abyss with 2 LP. Or maybe I'd be sad because ultimately I don't have any use for this item, at least as of right now. So that's the basics of how to farm unique items in Last Epoch. Most of your farming will be done in empowered monoliths. Generally speaking, a good rule of thumb is to try to push your corruption to at least 200. Remember, while most unique items can drop anywhere, certain monoliths will have nodes that give you a much higher chance of getting what you want. And there are specific drops which are exclusive to dungeons or bosses. Uniques can also be used to craft extremely powerful legendaries, transferring mods from an exalted rare over to the item. And you need a unique with legendary potential. Legendary potential uniques are quite rare. Think of them as ancients or primal ancients from Diablo, so you shouldn't explicitly farm for them until everything else in your build is done. And in the future, if you really want a specific thing to build around, maybe consider joining the Merchants Guild once that's added so that you can engage in Last Epoch's economy by trading with other players. But for now I'm curious, what's the rarest drop that you've gotten in Last Epoch? And after you got it, did you end up building around it or just kind of leaving it to sit in your stash? Now personally, I did recently get a very rare drop and I decided to build around it. But to know more about that, you're going to have to get subscribed and stay tuned so you don't miss it. Remember, if you have any questions about the Monolith of Fate, do be sure to check out my other video, which will be up in the card and down in the description below. But for now, a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for their continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make videos just like this one possible. Link below. If you want something else to watch, maybe check out the Monolith video, or I have several other Last Epoch resources, including another build that I played very recently. Or of course, you can always go with YouTube's recommendation, which will be on screen right now. That's all for me today. I hope you learned something. If you did, do be sure to leave a like. Good luck in your farming, and maybe I'll see you again sometime soon.